Let's talk about the Ice King, otherwise known as Simon Petrikov. I personally feel like he is greatly misunderstood. He is one of the survivors from before the Mushroom War, kept alive all this time by his crown, at the cost of his own sanity. As a result of the crown's power, he almost regressed into the mental state of a small child. He has an overwhelming desire to be loved, although he cannot grasp love is something that cannot be forced or taken, but has to be given freely. He is incredibly lonely, and he just wants to have friends. He sometimes thinks that Finn and Jake are his friends, even though they usually are in conflict with him. Here we will be relying heavily on the wiki as I map out the timeline of Simon the Ice King. So put on your jacket and grab some tissues, because the story of Simon and Marceline is a tragic one. Sometime before the Mushroom War, Ice King was a normal, olive-skinned, dark-haired human named Simon Petrikov who had been studying to be an antiquarian. He had a young fiancée named Betty, whom he referred to as his princess and loved dearly. In I Remember You, it is revealed that Simon was a professor of archaeology and had discovered the ancient text of heroes, the Enchiridion, during an expedition to the Hindu Kush mountain range. This is shown in a newspaper clipping that Marceline shows him in the episode I Remember You. The newspaper heading reads, Simon Petrikov unearths ancient treasure, and was written by a journalist named Bruce Goose. At some point in his career, he purchased a strange jeweled crown from an old dock worker in northern Scandinavia. After bringing the crown home, he put it on his head to make Betty laugh, but the crown caused him to black out and experience odd visions. He fought with the visions, shouted at them until he realized it wasn't real, it was the crown. Simon had no recollection of what he had said or done while wearing the crown, though it was enough to frighten away his fiancée. Simon never heard or saw Betty ever again and began to record himself on VHS tape so people would know his story. As time passed, Simon would hear voices and continue to have disturbing visions even without the crown, and over time, his skin turned light blue, his nose became pointy and long, and his eyes and hair turned white. He grew a full beard and his body temperature dwindled to an unnatural low of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite these unnatural body conditions, and being in a land covered by snow, Simon managed to survive, and his mind and body became further twisted by the crown. Simon thought himself too far gone to find an escape from its influence, though he hoped that he could one day regain his sanity enough so that Betty, his princess, would come back and love him again. He is no longer considered a human. The power of the crown not only twisted his mind, but his body as well. His race now is wizard, according to the writers. Ice King was also Marceline's beloved friend and guardian before eventually abandoning her. Around the time of the Mushroom War, and before losing his sanity, Simon found a young Marceline crying in the wreckage. He gave her a stuffed doll from a toy shop destroyed in the conflict to comfort her. This toy would eventually become Marceline's most precious possession, Hambo, which she would keep and cherish until it was sold to Maja the Sky Witch by her ex-boyfriend Ash. Marceline described Hambo to Ash as her favorite thing in the world. She was seen alone with a worn-out version of the stuffed toy when Finn and Jake visited her in memory of a memory, possibly several years after Simon gave it to her. In Sky Witch, Marceline is reunited with Hambo after Princess Bubblegum managed to swap it with Maja in return for the shirt Marceline gave her. Simon ultimately abandoned Marceline at the same time as the filming of his final video diary, fearing for her safety at what he was becoming. It could be implied that the crown he wore only sought to protect him. It taught him the secrets of the ice and snow, so he would survive the Mushroom War, as it did for Farmworld Finn and Finn the Human. However, in the same episode, Farmworld Finn mentions the crown's promise of power, implying the crown's seductive nature and negative influence, such as the ring from Lord of the Rings. As many years passed, Simon became disassociated from his original identity to the point that his only reaction to watching a video of his past was embarrassment at the idea of having once worn glasses. Further proof of this disassociation is shown in What Have You Done? When he responds to Jake's accusation of him stealing the crown with, "I didn't steal it, I made that item. Made it with the magic that I stole." When others refer to him as Simon within earshot, he is generally confused and ignores it. In I Remember You, Ice King is revealed to have known Marceline in the past during the aftermath of the Mushroom War. Although as much as Marceline remembers Ice King as Simon, he does not seem to remember her as much as she explains to him. It is implied through Marceline's dialogue that Ice King has repeatedly sought her out at her different residences over the years. This alludes back to Evicted, where it is revealed that Marceline switched back and forth with her many homes to hide from the Ice King when she did not want to deal with him, but does not remember their past friendship or his life as Simon, something that angers Marceline and sometimes even drives her to tears. The episode Simon and Marcy depicts this period of their lives, where Simon worked hard to keep young Marceline safe and happy in the devastated post-Mushroom War world. In the flashback, Simon is shown to look for food for Marceline, entertain her with jokes, and play songs possibly inspiring her own interest in music, and risking his life to find her some chicken soup when she is sick. However, it is shown that Simon occasionally needed to put the ice crown on his head to access its powers to protect Marceline, and each time he did so, it accelerated his transformation into the Ice King. With longer hair and a longer nose and a crazed, nonsensical personality, Marceline was aware of the crown's effects on him and made him promise not to put it on, but Simon was forced to in order to save them from some mutants, and was only barely able to get the crown off. Afterwards, he refers to her as Gunther, indicating his transformation had continued. A letter he wrote for her in the past indicates that Simon stayed away from Marceline because he was aware the crown's powers were sapping into his sanity and keeping him alive as he turned into the Ice King, and that he was afraid of saying or doing something harmful to her based on recent events. He remains a fan of her music, even as the Ice King, and irritates her by showing up at her doorstep to write a song to help him get princesses. However, despite her frustration with the Ice King's behavior, Marceline maintains some affections for him, turning away Finn and Jake when they offer to wallop him for her, and eventually perform the duet Remember You with Ice King, based on their past relationship. She also admits in her song Nuts that while she is deeply annoyed with Ice King, she is always glad to see him when he shows up. In addition, the Ice King seems to hold some concern for Marceline, immediately apologizing for shoving her, and then hides on top of the refrigerator, showing more guilt than he does when doing much worse things against Finn or other people anew. And in the episodes Finn the Human, Farmworld Marceline is seen as an older woman, saying to Farmworld Finn that her beloved friend Simon Petrikov stopped a missile using the magic from his crown, then pointing at a skeleton under a frozen missile, also stating that he could not save himself. Events surrounding the full nature of their past relationships have yet to be seen in the series. Since the events of I Remember You, Marceline has visited Ice King in his castle at least once, as shown in Bad Little Boy. She also appears to be more tolerant of Ice King in this episode, showing that she forgives him for not remembering her. In Simon and Marcy, a more in-depth relationship between them is explored. For example, Marceline invites him to play basketball. He is shown to have been like a father to her, being very protective of her and keeping his promises to her, and showing visible concern when she was ill. In the present, Marceline tells Finn and Jake that the Ice King means a lot to her and that she loves him. In The Empress' Eyes, Marceline tries to protect Ice King from the Empress, a vampire who had hypnotized Simon and turned him into her thrall, sometime before he completely succumbed to the Ice Crown. Marceline also reveals that Simon was the main reason she began hunting vampires, and it is suggested that she fought the Empress in the past in order to free Simon from her control. She is forced to subdue the Ice King when he attacks her, and Finn, under the Empress's orders, forces him to freeze the Empress. However, Ice King shields the Empress, preventing Marceline from finishing her off. Despite previously following the Empress's orders and protecting her, Ice King refuses to kill Marceline when the Empress commands him to, and it is revealed that the Ice King is actually immune to her hypnosis due to his mental state, and was simply following the Empress' orders and protecting her due to his infatuation with the Empress. Marceline eventually manages to kill the Empress with help from Princess Bubblegum. In Broke His Crown, Marceline ensures Princess Bubblegum that it will be fun hanging out with Ice King and requests that Princess Bubblegum address Ice King as Simon.
Yeah, money! It's 2018, man. Happily ever after theorists doing big things. Big